Hi everyone. So I would like to welcome you to Next Partners webinar. My name is Miro and I'll be walking you today through a topic concerning integration of a Kentico with other third-party systems. So specifically, we'll be talking about one of the integration options that you have in a Kentico, which we call integration bus. To be honest, at the beginning, we don't have enough feedback on this module, so I'm not sure, first of all, if you find it very difficult to use, not usable in your specific scenarios, or probably you don't know how to use it, you don't know about it, or probably you find it very easy to use. So if you give us any feedback on this module, we would be actually really glad. As you already know, every project differs from another. So what works for one client might not work for other clients. So there are ways of achieving, or many ways of achieving things in a Kentico, and some scenarios require more robust solution. For some, it would actually be an overkill to go such way. So simple solution is preferred. So I believe that once we understand all of the integration options that are there in a Kentico, we should be able to actually choose the correct one that will be used in our specific scenarios. So that is why I want to actually let you know what are the benefits of the integration bus module compared to the other integration options. Walk you through generally how it works, and I also prepared a simple scenario for you, so I'll hand you then the code examples. So let's jump into it, and basically at the end of the presentation, if there are any questions, I'll be really happy or glad to answer them. Just to let you know, presentation might be a bit longer than usual. I'll try to make sure that it is as short as possible, but there are actually things that we need to go through and understand. So first of all, let's look on the integration options that are in the system. First, REST service. Probably you know a couple of things about this one, but generally, it allows us to read, update, create, and delete any objects or document in the Kentico while using, I would say, unified format for communication, which could be or like XML, JSON, etc. So basically, you're just accessing specific URL of a Kentico with HTTP requests, which should be get, post, put, delete, etc. And it's really simple, I would say, and powerful at the same time, this module. But it has also some or couple of disadvantages. It's not suitable to be used in other words, it's not suitable to be used in every single scenario. For example, there are no notifications for you when it comes to checking what was changed in the system, so no system changes, which makes the outbound or direction from the Kentico to external system you cannot generally achieve real-time synchronization for that, so it's not generally mentioned for that. There are other ways how you could do it from external system. You can access the Kentico system periodically, so trying to access it and query whether something was changed in the system. So you cannot achieve real-time synchronization unless you engage other modules of a Kentico, like event handlers. So these are generally triggers for us, or generally for you, where you can hook up your custom code and perform some extra code. So with the event handler combination to the REST module, you can access external system, or you can ping external system that there is something which was changed in Kentico, and external system can access the data with the REST module. Or you can, from event handler, directly post the data to external system. So that's up to you, but the outbound direction is a bit more complicated to integrate compared to the inbound, because the REST module allows you to insert, update, or delete data from external systems, so that's fairly easy to do so. But another disadvantage here is that we don't have anything like queue for processing. So in other words, if something fails, you wouldn't be able to see the generally result in a Kentico and process it later. So again, from external system, you would need to contact Kentico and perform the update, delete, insert, or just read the data. That's up to you. So here I would say that this is one of the disadvantages. You can imagine this to be used for, let's just say, some client application or mobile application, where for your administrators, you want to give them access to Kentico event log, so just to see what's happening on the website. So you write the application which is accessing specific URL of Kentico to get the data and present it in the client application. So that would be example of where the REST module can be used in most of the scenarios. The second integration option that I consider to be real-time data access is option to use Kentico API or controls outside of Kentico in third-party system. But in this case, the disadvantage, or I would say one must, is that the external system needs to see a Kentico database that's based on the connection string, because Kentico API and controls, they rely on the connection string to the database, because Kentico is heavily database driven. But you get a real-time data access, so you can do whatever you want to do if you have direct access to the Kentico database. The other option that I touched briefly are event handlers, so a way of executing custom code whenever something happens in the system. So it's considered to be one of the few real-time synchronization options when it comes to outbound direction, because you can react to changes immediately. But again, there is no queue for processing if your if your check to the external system fails or external system is down. So the other disadvantage here is that it's basically the processing is executed within the page request, so it might slow down a website a bit, or generally the processing. And one of the last option here to consider when talking about these integration options are scheduled tasks. So for those of you who know how they work, so it's basically a code that is executed once per configured time. So this kind of code is executed within either context of your website or as a Windows service. That depends which one you prefer. When you do it as a part of Windows service, it's going to be a bit faster, but you don't have access to the context of the website itself. This is not mentioned for real-time synchronization, so because it runs only once per configured time, so it can access Kentico data as well, the data from external system, and perform synchronization. Well, here's the information that it can sort of simulate the real-time synchronization if you set up the execution interval to 1 second, but this is something that I don't actually recommend you to do. Example of use could be, for example, synchronization of a Kentico contacts or generally objects to external system like Salesforce. We're using a scheduled task to do it once per some time. I believe it's once per day or once per hour, because the Salesforce itself limits amount of queries that you can perform to that system. So that's why we cannot do real-time synchronization of the contacts. So there are some limitations of the Salesforce. So we decided to do it with a custom scheduled task in the system. So these are the options, general ones. But besides these, there is a more robust, I would say, solution: integration bus. So the main idea here is to give you a tool prepared for, I would say, complex integrations, where you can go ahead and just develop only the connector, which you can imagine like some kind of a .NET class inheriting from special Kentico class, where your task is to just override or implement specific methods, which we say this is the method that you should override, while you're getting advantage of the features of the integration bus, and those are generally notifications about the system changes. And one of the best ideas here that I consider is a task queue. So whenever the external system is down, for some reason, you still are able to synchronize those tasks later on when the external system is up and running. So we could consider, for example, scenarios where the integration bus can be used, like, for example, the first one, whenever we need to log changes of our documents or object modifications to external system, why I would use personally integration bus. REST module can be used for this purpose, but the problem is that actually the external system would need to periodically access the Kentico, which is not something that we want to use, obviously. So it's on-demand solution. So I would say that we don't want to use the REST module in this case. So what are the other options? Well, we could use event handlers, so triggers that are happening in the Kentico. This could work very well, but the problem is there is no queue for those. Meaning that if external system is down and I cannot contact it within the page request, then I will lose generally that change. So that's why my idea here would be to use the integration bus, where I would lock the task into Kentico queue, and then I will synchronize it immediately. And if the system is not up and running, then I'm gonna do it later on. It's not a problem. So I would use, that's why, integration bus in here. And in the second example, where let's just say in external system, I'm editing the products and I want to import it again into the Kentico from external system. I could do it with a REST module, but in this case, again, if something fails or you know, my code is not optimized in a really good way, again, I wouldn't be able to notice what actually failed. So instead of that, I would use the integration bus with a queue, and I would see which tasks were processed and which tasks basically failed, and I'm gonna see why they failed directly in the Kentico. So these are sample two scenarios. I'll prepare another one, so I'll walk you through those. Okay, so let's start with the outbound direction, how this can be implemented in Kentico. It might be a bit technical, but we need to actually go through that. So this is generally Kentico CMS or EMS. So the way it works is that here is your connector. This is what you need to implement. So, but before you do that, actually you need to first of all subscribe to changes. System changes of objects or documents. So you can imagine these two subscriptions to be like a condition saying, hey, I wanna make sure that whenever the users or roles are updated, it should fall down into my connector, and then I can get access to its data and synchronize it to external system. So by subscription, we mean something like condition. Do I want to have objects? Do I want to have users, documents from new section, product section, etc. So I'm going to show you how to do that. And then here is the task queue, which is implemented by specific database table, and the objects and documents are falling down into the task queue in unified format in XML. So whenever something happens and it matches my subscription or condition, it goes to the task queue, and then it will jump into my connector as a type safe object. So not as XML, but type safe object where I can process it and submit it to external system. So real values here are subscription, so conditions, what I want to receive into the connector, task queue, so if processing fails, the task will still be sitting in the queue. That of course depends on your implementation, whether you want to delete it or keep it there. If processing fails, I'll again let you know how to do that. And then the unified format of the structure of the object sitting in the database queue. So Kentico recognize it as well. It can cast it to your specific type safe object. So when it comes to processing of the task, there are two types. So I told you that document goes to the task queue, right? And then it's processed by the connector. But it's not true in all of the cases. There are two options. So either it goes directly to your connector, you can imagine it that way. So object changes, it jumps into connector, and you can contact external system. So it does not go through the task queue. So that's basically asynchronous processing. So within the page request, whenever something happens, the object is changed, we're going to process the object. It will contact the connector itself, and then whatever you do in here, the processing continues. The advantage here is that context information of your current user, current website, and whatever else you can imagine, context is available for you. You can access also object like parent or children of the currently being processed object, but there are disadvantages, of course. Object will be definitely lost in case the processing fails. So if your connector is not able to contact external system and external system is down, it does not go through the task queue, and generally you're done. So you cannot get back to it later on. So that would be considered disadvantage, and since it is happening within the page request, it's slowing down page processing as well. So if something happens in here and you're trying to in a loop contact the external system or so, it could slow down the whole processing. When I'm talking about objects, that the same applies to documents as well. So generally you can see it in here, so objects or documents. The asynchronous processing is better, I would say, from performance perspective, because whenever something happens in the system, so object or document is changed, first of all, the system will log the task into the queue, and then separate thread will actually process the object as well. So it will not affect the page processing itself, because separate thread is doing that. But disadvantage is that you don't have the context available, and you cannot access the parent and children objects in asynchronous processing. But advantage, if something happens, the task is still sitting in the queue. So you need to decide which one you want to use, one of these. I would recommend the asynchronous. For some reason, you might need to access the context, so that's why we give you this option, but preferred is asynchronous. Okay, so these are two types of processing. Now, this might be pretty complicated to explain, but let me just go back here. Here I said that the subscription itself, it's sort of a condition saying which object should fall down to the connector and which should be processed. So that's a condition, right? But the subscription itself contains an information saying to the system how the object should fall to the connector. So whether the whole object should actually fall into with all of its child objects, an option to translate my foreign keys, or whether only the object itself without option to translate the foreign keys will fall down into the connector, or this simple snapshot is a type of object which allows me to do translation. So once again, this is the object. It could be document, or it could be whatever else, user role. It has properties, and those properties they have values. So this is value of the property, value of the property, value of the property. Some properties could be foreign keys. Right, so imagine that this is foreign key to another table. If you subscribe to a data subscription, only the object itself with all of these values will fall down to your connector, but you would not have an option to translate these foreign keys, because the foreign key itself could be, let's just say, ID. In my system in Kentico, the ID could be I'm going to say, let's just say 5, and in external system this could be 10 or 11. The ID could change. So that's why you might want to do a translation. So if you subscribe to object which is simple snapshot, it will give you the object, plus it will give you the translation table, and you can translate, or it can give you translation feature, and you can translate the foreign keys in the code. So ID 5 to match ID 15 or whatever else is in the external system. And if you subscribe to the snapshot, that means you get object, translation table, and you get also option to access, let's just say, extra objects like children of it. So imagine Paul itself has Paul answers. So Paul's answers are child objects of a Paul. So you get access only to those, or also to those. So it depends what you want to do. If you want to simply just synchronize the object from one table without any foreign key bindings, translation, child object, etc., you do subscription to a simple type of object or simple snapshot if you require translation. So here's a table for you which is very important. So objects, they do support all of these data types for subscription. Documents, they unfortunately don't support snapshot. So currently, but in the future we might wanna, or we have plans to actually improve it. So snapshot, when it's used for the with the documents, it basically cannot be used. But if it would be, then you would be able to access, let's just say, child objects. Those could be, for example, document attachments, categories, and etc. So we're going to be improving this one. When it comes to the asynchronous processing, only a snapshot, which is this one, is supported. This is based on the nature of the synchronous processing, because here I'm saying that you can access the parent object, child object, you can get the whole context of the website or whatever else available. So that's why it makes sense to actually give you only the snapshot, which is the highest level of the subscription that you can get in the synchronous processing. So simple snapshot and simple, they're not supported. With the asynchronous processing, all of those are supported. Then when it comes to translation of your foreign key bindings, this is available only for asynchronous processing and supported by these two objects. So these green boxes are represented by those kind of translation data. So it's not supported with the simple, so you see no here. And when it comes to accessing the child objects, binding, categories, etc., this is obviously available only for the snapshot itself. So this is something that you can imagine like this. So very important table. So you need to decide whether you want to have asynchronous and asynchronous processing, so one of these, and then what kind of object do you expect to receive in your connector, so one of these. And depending on the table, you can actually you can see which one are available in which of the processing. Now this is how it works when we're talking about outbound direction, so direction from the CMS to external system. So forget about the left part for a while. So it's very simple, because what you're doing here, you as a developer, that you're integrating only this right hand side, and specifically only one method. So it's that easy. You go ahead and create your own class, which will inherit from, let's just say, building base integration connector class of Kentico, and this is the base integration connector. So this gives you lots of all of those features, so task queue and everything else. But here, that's the method that you're trying to implement. So the way it works is that there are tasks sitting in the queue, and this base integration connector will try to process them one by one. So first task will go into your connector. If it matches your condition, subscription condition, here you will process it. Optionally, you can translate those columns if needed. So if you subscribe to this object or this object, you can translate those foreign keys if needed. So you call specific method for that, and but that is optional. So from this method, you will contact external system. You will, let's just say, receive for response from the external system, and then you will return a result of the whole processing of your object. The result is very important. It could be, let's just say, OK, error, and skip, etc. So these kind of messages, they say to the base integration connector whether the next task should be processed, or whether some exceptions should be logged, or whether the task should be deleted, etc. So depending on the result, we know what we're going to do with the task. But this is implemented. You're only doing this one method. I'll let you know when we're talking about the example where to do that. So fairly easy, as you're going to see. This is diagram. Might sound complicated, but it's generally fairly easy. So when you want to do the translation, let me get back here. So simple snapshot or snapshot, you do the translation of your foreign keys. In this case, what you have is simple snapshot or simple snapshot, one of these. So this is your object data. It could be whatever. You can imagine it could be a user, a role, document, etc. And those objects, they could have foreign key. So foreign key to some parent object, which could be 1, foreign key to some other object, which could be 2. Now, what we give you is a translation table. So this is something that Kentico will build for you. So 1 in here means that it's code name of your user. So it's going to be administrator, let's just say. And 2 would mean code name of the other object in here, which could be some kind of a document, GUID of the document or something like that. So we give you this translation table, we give you the object, and it will fall down to your method, to your connector. And in the connector, you will generally implement method called, let's just say, get external object ID or get external document ID. So this is, again, only one method. So everything else is ensured for you. And in this method, you will get access to these IDs, their code names, and you will return IDs, if needed, which are matching the external system. So ID 1 could match ID generally 5 for this object. But obviously, this is not something that you need to do. It's just usually used whenever the structure of the Kentico database is pretty much similar to the structure of the external database or external system. So you do the translation by calling translate columns to external. Again, I'll show you a real example, and you will end up generally with updated object. So you start in here, and once this goes through the specific method, it will return this object, and then you're generally done with the translation, and then you can process the task and actually submit it to external system. This is example how the synchronous processing works. It's a bit different compared to this one because here you have task queue, right? That's basically this portion. You have task queue. But if it goes directly, so object to connector or document to connector, in this case you don't have a task queue, so it will jump into one method where you will do pretty much the same. So you'll contact external system and return a result. But in this case, we don't give you a sort of a translation table. So as we go here into the table, it says translation data, or that those tables are available only for asynchronous processing. So, and only for these objects. So in case of synchronous processing, you don't get that option to translate the columns. But still, since you have access to all of the information about the object, you can write your own custom code and perform the translation on your own. And then you return a result. So here, advantage context is available, as I said, but object can be lost. At least you're going to see within the Kentico event log that something failed to be processed. So look into event log if you're going to use the synchronous processing. As I said, it's slowing down the page processing, and you cannot call translate columns to external method. So this one, so the whole translation process in here cannot be used in case of synchronous processing. You need to do it with your own custom code. Okay, so let's jump into a real scenario. I want to walk you through what I have so far. When you're doing the implementation itself, obviously, first of all, we need to decide what we want to subscribe to. Do we want to subscribe to objects or documents? And then you filter out those objects, either all of them or just users, roles, page templates, style sheets, whatever you can imagine. Then you need to define what's going to be the data type that you want to use. So one of these, simple snapshot or snapshot, so what you want to work with. And the last thing is that you need to define whether you want to use a synchronous or asynchronous mode. So real implementation here. Let's imagine that I have two systems, so Kentico on the left-hand side and external system on the right-hand side, which is represented again by some very simple ASP.NET website. And what I want to do is that I want to actually make sure that event booking attendees of the booking event module in a Kentico are synchronized in a two-way two-way synchronization. So whenever something happens here in a Kentico, external system is updated, and whenever something happens in external system, I want to update the Kentico itself. So let's start with the outbound direction, and then we'll move to the inbound direction. I've choose the option, or in my made-up scenario, Kentico is able to see the external system directly, its database. So it's easier for me to access the data, change it. So you would be arguing why I would use, for example, the integration bus module, whereas I could, let's just say, hook up my custom code to object change, to global event handler, and access external database directly. So why I'm doing this is that because the external system could be down. For some reason it's not accessible. So what's going to happen in that case? Well, I would lose the change. So in this case, I want to make sure that changes are logged firstly into the Kentico queue, and then they are processed either immediately or later on, depends on the synchronization option that I have. So that's why in this made-up scenario, I have access to external system. My external system is represented by, as I said, database, table, and simple website. So let's take a look what we need to do in our connector. So imagine that we're only doing this portion here. So we create our own custom class that needs to actually inherit from base integration connector class, and then we subscribe to changes that we want to receive. So first of all, what we need to do is that we need to register our connector for the integration bus module. So it's done here in the backend of the system. If I show you, this is my connector. It's provided from app code. You can do it from DLL file assembly. Generally, in my case, I've done it from app code, and this is its class name that it's going to be used. For that purpose, if I do it like this from app code, that means that I need to have class loader file, where basically I'm hooking up my custom decision code to onGetCustom class, and here I'm saying what that expression, my integration connector in here, where it should fall, so which class should be used. This is a standard approach when you want to serve providers or generate custom classes for, let's just say, payment gateways and other modules of Kentico. So you do it like this. Nothing complicated. You can find information in our documentation. And then from perspective of the user interface, if we stay here for a second, you have an option to see outgoing tasks. So something like a queue of tasks which are very similar to content staging tasks, and incoming tasks, so those which are coming into the Kentico. There are settings which you can influence. So you could say that you want to disable the whole integration bus, or just logging of those tasks, or processing of those tasks, etc. So here are the settings that you can use. And now the integration connector itself needs to inherit from base integration connector. So that is basically a class sitting here. So I'm inheriting from base integration connector. Then within the init method, you need to provide a connector with its name. So here I have init, and I'm saying what's the connector name. That is a code name coming from generally integration bus settings. So that's this portion, so that the system knows which one should be used. And next, you do the subscription. So there are two objects prepared for you for subscription. So you could subscribe to objects or generally to documents, and use method subscribe to in order to actually let Kentico that this is the subscription that I want to create. Nothing complicated. So you create, I want to subscribe, I want to transfer event attendees. So that is an object. So I'm going to create object integration subscription class, object basically here, and I will provide it with the connector name. Then I need to say what sort of events I want to react to. is it going to be create, delete, or all of them, or update? So that depends. Here I've done it for the create object. So whenever attendee is created in Kentico, it's going to jump into my connector. And I'm saying what kind of objects I want to subscribe to. So it's basically attendee, event attendee. And here is a sort of a combination of subscription data type plus the synchronization type. So generally, I've decided that I want to do asynchronous processing and I want to use simple snapshot. Why I'm doing this? So let me go back here. I want to do this simple snapshot, and that's because if we take a look on the database level, here we have event attendee. So this is the object. It has one foreign key, and I want to show you how to actually transfer the foreign key to the foreign key or the ID in the external system. So in our case, event attendee is connected to document in the content tree, and in my external system, which is represented here by external system table, I have pretty much the same structure. So event user, different name of the columns, but in reality it's pretty much the same. And here I have event user event ID, which is pointing to this table containing all of my events. So here I could have completely different value, right, compared to what I have in Kentico. So that's why I want to do actually a translation, and that is why I subscribe to simple snapshot, because simple snapshot allows me to do the translation. So that's why the decision. And here the last parameter says what's going to be the code name of the object that I want to subscribe to. I said that I want to have all of those, but here you could write a sort of work condition saying that you want to get only attendees where its name or its code name contains some specific value. So then you subscribe to that object, and that's it. So now Kentico knows that it should jump into your connector. Now, what we want to do is that we want to implement that one method that I was talking about here, because we're doing outbound direction. So process the object, and the method in this case it's called process internal task async. If I would be doing synchronous processing, I would be implementing this method instead of this one, but I want to do it this way. And within that method, if I show you, that's basically, it's going to be sitting in here. It's called process internal task async. So here I can grab the whole object. It's tapes. Oops, let me just go back. So it's basically generalized info. I can cast it to attendee info, whatever makes sense for me to work with. And what am I doing is that I'm calling method translate columns to external. So again, if we go in here, so from this method, I'm calling this one, translate columns to external. It's basically this method. And this method ensures translation of the foreign keys. So Kentico knows that for my event attendee, the only foreign key here is foreign key pointing to my document, and I want to translate it. So that's why, if we go back in here, I'm going to be implementing a method which is called get external document ID, not get external object ID. That's because my foreign key is document, not pointing to object. So that's why whenever I call this method, translate columns to external, Kentico will call a method which is called get external document ID, where I could do my translation. So this is my helper method which is doing the translation for me. And here the idea is to return one value, integer value, for that specific column. So you're gonna see what's the GUID of the document, site name, culture code, some helper values are available for you. And then once I translate this object, so here at this moment this object contains the translated information. Now I can process it to external system. So this is just my helper class which is updating database. So we don't need to go into details. This is implementation that depends on you. But once I submit the data there, I'm gonna return a result OK, error, or error on skip. That basically says to the connector what should happen next. So this is integrated by Kentico, and I return a result here, and that result says, hey, do we want to process next task, or do we want to stop the whole processing of all of the tasks, etc. So if you return OK, that means task is generally removed from the queue because it was processed correctly. So that's the only thing what I need to do. Let me just stop the processing here so that you can see it. I'm running in debug mode. So now I will go ahead and let's just say I will update this attendee. So I'm gonna say Miro. Okay, save it. Now this moment is jumping into that method I was talking about. This is the only method that you need to implement. You have access to the whole object, so in my case it's attendee info. And what I will do is that I will call this translate columns to external that internally calls this method. So if I put a breakpoint in there, you see it's jumping into that get external document ID. At this moment, it will know that there is some document with this GUID, and it will translate, my method will translate it to ID of ID of document or record of the event from external system. So then it will, at this moment, I have translated object, and I can contact external system, process it, and then if the processing is just fine, I will return OK, and this means that now in the external system this record is updated. So if we go in the external system and open this event user table, you will see that the email address was updated correctly. I can do it once again so you can see. So I'll save it, and now it's jumping in here. So let me just remove these breakpoints, and again the external system, if I refresh this one, was updated. So you see the updated information. This is a source Kentico table which was obviously updated, and this is a target table of my external system. And now if we go back in here, so pretty much we've done only one method and one translation method for translating our document to external system. So you see, nothing complicated, but in the backend of the system is something I want to show you. In the outgoing task, there is nothing sitting in here because I return OK as a status. So that means the task was deleted. Otherwise, it would be hanging in here if I say error or error and skip. So you would see it there, and with some exception. So usually outgoing or outbound direction is happening, I would say, right away or immediately in real time, depending whether it's asynchronous or synchronous. When it comes to the other, here's the information that you can access external system with their API if they have some, or just access the database if there is some, or use some web service to access external system. That depends. There might be other ways around, so you can think about other ones. But when it comes to inbound direction, you have two options. So the connector class could be sitting in external system, and the idea is that from the connector you will process the external object, and you will create a very general object which will be stored into the Kentico task queue, incoming task queue, and it will be then processed by the Kentico. So Kentico, based on the XML definition of the object, would know whether that is document or that is the object, and we would know how to actually work with it. But in the connector, you need to create such object. So connector could be sitting in external system. In this case, you need to have Kentico DLL files referenced here in the external system, which might not be possible in all of the scenarios. So you could do it the other way around. So from external system, you will call a web service or WCF, where this web service will actually log the task while connector sitting directly in a Kentico. So one way or another, you still it needs still jump into the connector, which will lock the task into the queue. Alright, so I'm gonna do it the way that in my real scenario from external system, I cannot access the Kentico database directly, so I'm gonna do it via the web service. So when you're doing the other way around, so inbound, you implement prepare internal object method where the object will fall down, and you need to make sure that the object is actually locked into the task queue in very unified format, so that Kentico then can process it later on. So you will do this method, and when the object is a simple snapshot or snapshot, Kentico might also call translation method again to translate the foreign keys back to its original value, right? So when you're talking about the objects, it's going to call this method, and when we're talking about documents, it's going to call this translation method. So pretty much the idea is the same, but the methods are called a bit differently. Okay, so I'm going to show you an example here. So in external system, I have, let's just say I'm going to create a new user here. I'll create my colleague here. Okay, so I'll save it. The external system should be contacted. So here in the external table, I should have right now 2 records. This one has record 36. So I have sample application, which allows me to access or read the data. So this is the external system, and I decided that I want to give an option to editor to create a new attendee or edit existing one. So regardless what I do, let me just go ahead and change this email address. So I'm going to say Carol. And now I'm going to submit this change. So while doing so, this external application is contacting my web service sitting in here, and web service contains a process task data. This is just the name of my method where I'm going to pass the data. I'm passing it actually in a XML format, so it's easier to work with me. And then I'm passing task type, which could be update, delete, insert. So just to let know my web service what I want to do with it, and protecting it, let's just say with username and password. Here the main idea, if I put it in here, from external system, I'm gonna hit the submit option. Now the external system, which is Kentico from perspective of external system, is checking generally the username and password, and the main idea is that I'm gonna call process external task method of a Kentico. So let me just stop there for a second. We are here. So from external system, I will call this method process external task. This is something that is already implemented by the system, so you don't worry about that. Your connector is here, right? So connector are 2 methods: prepare internal object and get internal object parameters or document parameters, depends. This is the translation of those foreign keys. So I'll call this method. It will jump into my connector. So if I go in here and go to the connector, here I have that method I was talking about for inbound direction. So prepare internal object. So I'll put it in here, and once I call this method, it will generally jump into this prepare internal object where I'm going to receive the object from external system. I made sure that it's basically sort of a XML style string that I'm passing there and back, so that I can read it in a very nice way with let's just say custom data object of a Kentico, so I can easily access all of those values just by using this option. And what I'm doing is that I'm generally going through this code and making sure that I'm actually returning very generalized object of a Kentico. So generally I'm creating the info here, which is in my case a base info or event attendee info, updating it or populating its properties, and once I'm done here, I'm returning it. And depending on whether my object supports translation, there might be one extra method called get internal document parameters. So if I move it forward, you're going to see it jumping into that method, and here I do the translation. So in my external system, this record is connected to, let's just say, ID2, and if I go into here, I'm going to do the translation, and the ID2 means document with GUID like this because of my custom logic. Yeah, that is not that important, but you see that I'm returning no GUID, and now what's going to happen is that the task is being logged by the system. Now, task is not processed automatically. This is different between outgoing and incoming tasks. So if I go to incoming task, now the task is sitting there for me, unless I go ahead and process it. I'll show you how to do that automatically as well. So here, if you go to the task itself, so it's basically update task. Here is the task title for connector of mine, and I can go into details. And when I use the option that I was talking about previously, let me just get back to that so it's clear for you, which is simple snapshot. I get option to see the object plus the translation table for me. So if I go in here, I have the object plus as a part of the task, we're going to say what this 2 means in a Kentico. So ID2 for this object, which is node, means that it should be translated to node GUID in the system, which matches this value on my side. And later on, when Kentico is processing this task, it's not asking your connector anymore, what does it mean? We already know what does it mean for us. So this is unified format of the task for us. How do I actually process this task automatically to be sort of to have a real-time processing? Well, there are generally 3 ways. So let me go back here. Either there is a predefined scheduled task in the system for processing those inbound tasks. So if I go in here and I go to schedule tasks, here we're gonna see the one that is sitting for us. I believe it's global. Yeah, so it's called process external integration tasks. So by default it's enabled, but if we go into details, you're going to see that it's executed once per day. You can change its interval. So this is one way of doing things. If you want to get real-time synchronization from external system, you can ping a page which is sitting in CMS pages and in integration notify.aspx, that's the name of it. So you ping it, and by pinging it, Kentico will process all of the tasks for your specific connector. Or you could do it also manually via the user interface of the system. So you go to administration and integration bus, and here for incoming task, I'm going to process it. So I'll synchronize it, and now if it goes just fine, it will be removed from the system, and now this email address should be updated. So if I refresh it, so now you get updated email address that I wanted to synchronize. So here from the external website, I've implemented the ping to that page. So if I check this option, and I'm gonna say, I don't know, I'm gonna change it back, or I'm gonna say consulting here, and I'll submit the changes and check this option. The code is implemented in such a way that that specific page is contacted. So I'm going to do it like this. I'm going to remove this, and this as well, and this as well. And now what I'm going to see is that the user was updated in the system, and I'm also saying that the response from the external server, which is Kentico in my case, is okay. So that means there's not going to be any incoming task for me because it was automatically processed. And if I go in here, this should be updated automatically to actually consulting@kentico.com. So you see that you can also implement real-time synchronization when you ping this URL. So here's the very simple scheme. You call this method, you implement this method and you make sure that those tasks are processed either by scheduled task or one of these options. Nice thing about this is that you have a task queue for you, which is then processed by one of these options. So you don't lose the change, unless of course the Kentico website is down for maintenance reasons only, of course. Okay, so we've been talking about this option, and I believe that this is the information that I wanted to deliver today. I will, of course, provide you with recording of this session, of this meeting, as well as the presentation. I will hand you all of the code files that I was using and let you know how to run such setup. But here's some summary. So why I like the integration bus? That's because it's a robust solution. There is a queue of processing tasks, so you can rely on that. One disadvantage probably might be that those tasks are processed one by one. So when it comes to performance, you might want to check what's the implementation of your connector and whether it would work actually smoothly in your specific environment. So the performance, I would say, is pretty much similar to content staging of a Kentico. And I'm saying also that please don't use the integration bus for all of the scenarios. It's not suitable for very simple scenarios where you can think about other modules of a Kentico like REST, event handlers, or scheduled tasks, etc. So you need to first of all think about whether it's not overkill to do it this way with the task queue. Also, yeah, it's robust, but it might not be worth of doing things this way if your scenario is different. So from perspective of future plans, what we're planning is that we're like to actually implement the bulk operations for those tasks to actually reduce the amount of transactions, so improve the performance even more, and give you some kind of a general service that you can call from external system, rather than implementing your own web service or WCF service, because otherwise you would need to use Kentico DLL files outside of a Kentico, basically all of them, in order to call that specific method that I was talking about. So process external task, which actually fires the whole processing and puts the object into the task queue.